Jesus' invitation comes in a myriad of ways. And so often we don't notice because it looks masked by how ordinary the extraordinary meets us. He walks by the shore of our lives, inviting us to follow him. But like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, our eyes are often prevented from recognizing him until much later. Our burning hearts recognize him, however. Our delight recognizes him. Our joy recognizes him. Our hope recognizes him. And following our hearts and our joy and our delight and our hope, set on fire with his love, we may find ourselves responding to his beckoning hand to become agents of his kingdom, catching people so that they might know how beautiful, how beloved, how pleasing they are to him, and what a difference they can make by finding their home in him. It's funny, though, how he calls to us. So funny that often we don't take it seriously and don't see Jesus or the call. It's so funny how he catches our attention. Take this sermon, for example. I had a terrible struggle writing this sermon. I kept thinking of Mozart. I don't know why. But I couldn't get Mozart and the delight at the prospect of what we were going to experience today out of my mind. I found myself searching the web for Mozart and wanting to read again about his story, the story of this crazed man that was such a channel of beauty and grace. I found myself going on YouTube to listen to his extraordinary music and to find again what had brought such delight into my life. And then as I was scanning through YouTube, I found a black and white snippet of a television broadcast of the Mozart Requiem in D, and I found my heart burning as it had once burned as a child, and my pulse racing, and again a joy that I had first found early on in childhood. The original date was January 21st of 1964, almost 50 years ago to the day. I was sitting in the den watching TV when the regular programming was interrupted by a special broadcast. It was a Requiem Mass celebrated at Sacred Heart Cathedral in Boston for President Kennedy, who had been assassinated just 2 months earlier. Mozart was brought to the nation, to a grieving nation, to his widow who was there and his mother and the rest of his family. The musical setting of the Mass was Mozart's Requiem in D minor, presented by the Boston Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, along with the choir of St. John's Seminary. And even though quite young, from the moment the Mass began with the introit to its conclusion with the singing of the Ite Missa Est, the Mass is ended, something in me came alive with joy. My heart was on fire, a fire that never left me. It was the music, it was the setting of the Mass, the Eucharist. It was the interplay between the sonorous voice of that old curmudgeon Cardinal Cushing chanting blissfully and unashamedly off-key, Dominus vobiscum, and the agonizingly beautiful Gregorian chant of St. John's Seminary Choir, Et cum spiritu tuo cessam corda habemus ad Dominum. And it was the power of the musical genius of Mozart, whose own heart was on fire, crazy heart, with the music of an unseen kingdom, Matthew calls the kingdom of heaven. Everything changed that night, for I now realize 50 years later that unwittingly I stepped out onto a new shore. I was possessed with what I saw and what I heard, and I had fallen in love. And I believe it was not coincidence when years later, just before I decided to follow the call to seminary, I found a recording and a copy of the program from that Mass while searching in the back room of a dusty second-hand record store. It's taken me 50 years and the struggle through this sermon to admit to myself, much less to all of you, that Jesus came to the shore and called me to step out of a boat that day. It has taken me a half-century to appreciate the sound of his voice speaking to my heart in a way my heart could hear and sing, through the beauty of Mozart wedded to the ancient liturgy of the church, revealing a kingdom not of this world and a way I could never have imagined, a way of extraordinary beauty that opened the door to a kingdom. And yet now I realized it was the right way and the only way for me to become a fisherman, to fish in the only way I knew how. And I knew it because of the joy and the bliss that I felt within my own heart. So today it is for me a miracle that you and I are here in this liturgy with Mozart 50 years, almost to the day from that moment. It's an anniversary of sorts. We don't know what it was that moved James and John to leave their father Zebedee in the boat and without hesitation to follow Jesus when he called to them. But it must have been powerful to get them out of the boat and leave their father holding the net. One writer puts it this way: what does God's kingdom accomplish? Here it disrupts completely the priorities and social and economic obligations of a household trying to support itself by supplying the fishing quotas it has contracted with Rome. It interrupts life, as that program interrupted the normal play on that black and white TV set 50 years ago. And yet, in that way and in other ways, Jesus comes to the shores of our lives. He comes and beckons us with joy and delight, calls us in a myriad of wonderful ways, usually ways that we can hear and feel and delight in, and yet it's hard to see him until our eyes are opened by Eucharist and community and liturgy. How has he come to the shores of your life? How has he called to you? Where has your heart burned within you? Where have you come alive with joy and delight? That's Jesus calling you to delight in the life, the heavenly life he has before him. Mozart, in his own crazy, wonderful, uninhibited way, knew that life and expressed it and became that channel for grace and a means among many means, wonderful means, through which Jesus calls us again, follow me and truly live the delight that is life. Amen.